Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Season 2 Retrospective. If you haven't watched Season 1, go watch Season 1's Retrospective, but here we are to talk about Season 2, where the show takes a pretty steep shift. So Season 1 ended with the crew of the Discovery finishing the Klingon War by putting a bomb inside Kronos and then giving it to the leader of the Klingons, L'Rell, who was a prominent Klingon in that show. We begin this season completely differently. We are immediately introduced to the USS Enterprise, commanded by Captain Pike, and it's a pretty damn interesting sort of move for the show. The season begins with a Red Angel. It's a huge plot. They're getting these signals. They need to investigate them. The Enterprise is taken command by Captain Christopher Pike, who was from the original Star Trek pilot The Cage, played by Anson Mount, and we'll get more into him later. The main storyline follows them investigating these signals that the Red Angel's leaving out. They get to see the Red Angel at points, and it's a really good hook because you don't know who the Red Angel is. We start to see as the show progresses that there is an AI used by Section 31, which is going to be prominent this season, that wants to become sentient. Basically, over the course of the series, the AI begins taking more and more control, and it begins to want sentience. And if you'd watch Season 1, you'll see that Discovery actually has all the information from a big alien creature from last season, and that is what the AI is going to use to become conscious. It's a fantastic idea of consciousness and AI, and was reused like several endings of certain seasons of Star Trek in the last few years have been AI. That's been the ending of it. It's a really odd coincidence, but this is where it started, and it's very much it's very intriguing. The introduction of Captain Pike is actually a breath of fresh air from Discovery. We immediately see there's a bit of a writing tonal shift from the very dark, serious nature to a more light-hearted. I don't want to say the whole season's light-hearted, but the show makes moments a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more fun. Very much we get introduced to Captain Pike, who also takes us around our bridge crew, because a lot of the complaints of Season 1 were that no one knew who the other crew members were other than Burnham, Saru, Tilly, Stamets, Culber. And we had a lot of other crew members who were there regularly, but we didn't really know them. So Season 2, Pike comes in, he literally shows them his record.
There. Oh, God. That's your file. I'm sorry, sir.
That's all right, Ensign. Everybody grab a seat. Go ahead. I want you all to give that a read. I'm Captain Christopher Pike. Up there are my commendations, my diagnosis of childhood asthma. That big red F. That was my failing grade in astrophysics at the Academy. I know this is a hard left turn. You're en route to Vulcan to pick up a new captain. I was briefed on the classified details surrounding your last one.
He acknowledges that Lorca, the captain from the first season, betrayed them, and they've been through a lot, and he wants to be a fresh and different captain. And so he goes around the room, gets them to introduce themselves. He just goes, oh, rank doesn't matter. So they're just saying their names. It's a really interesting way to just get an idea of who Captain Pike is as a captain. Very different from the Cage Captain Pike, but he has to be. And we get a new and fresh Pike, more in the vein of, I would say, Picard and Pike from the Star Trek 2009 Kelvin films. Anson Mount plays this perfectly. Anson Mount manages to do some amazing stuff with this character. The season's arc is pushed to the extreme that it can go, but it's very clear the writers have changed up how they feel about certain things in this season. I think there were certain revisions made which were clearly fixes. So the Klingons have grown hair, which apparently they do outside of wartime. I don't know how real that is, but it was basically a way to make the Klingons look more like the Klingons we know. They also softened a lot of their ridges and a lot of the makeup to just make them a little bit more expressive. It's a vast improvement over the season 1 makeup, but it's still very different from what we know. The Klingons aren't as prominent in this season because the prominence is given to the characters in this show. So Discovery itself hasn't changed much. The ship still looks like the ship, but it's the structure of the characters and the storytelling. So we've got Culber, who was resurrected. Culber's resurrected this season. We've got Ash coming back and having to deal with that. We've got the Red Angel stuff going on. The Red Angel, who we find out is Michael Burnham's mother, and then not Michael Burnham's mother. And it's a lot of stuff thrown in the bag. We get some excellent Enterprise stuff. We get introduced to Section 31, which apparently now is an incredibly secretive and likes to just parade around with starships. It's quite an odd thing. But I really enjoyed it. So in terms of production value, I always forget with Discovery how freaking amazing this show looks. The graphics are always on point. The show always looks beautiful. It's shot beautifully. The special effects are just amazing for a Star Trek show. Like, even better than a lot of the stuff that's come afterwards. In terms of its focus, like, I love that there is character beats going on with other characters. Like, for example, we've got Owo, who's one of the Helm officers. We've got a whole heap of other characters introduced. I don't know how to explain it, but let's just go through the main character arcs with the characters this season. So Michael Burnham's main story this season is rediscovering her hope or her faith, as well as bridging a relationship with her adopted brother Spock. Now, one of the most controversial things about Discovery was that Michael Burnham is Spock's foster brother. Now, Spock likes to add extra family members, and we saw this with Sybok in Star Trek V. So it's really interesting to watch with Michael Burnham. She has a great relationship with her foster father, Sarek, whereas Spock doesn't. She has a great relationship with Amanda, which Spock does. They're very close, but there's a little bit of cheating here about Spock not meeting Sarek. It seems a bit odd at times. Why isn't Sarek there? Especially towards the end. Spock is played by Ethan Peck, who, in this series, I was like, he looks nothing like Leonard Nimoy whatsoever. But he managed to nail sort of that younger, more emotionally volatile Spock. He also does crazy really well. There's a lot of fighting in this season. But Ethan Peck was fantastic. And he's another introduction to the cast alongside Anson Mount. And you might be guessing Strange New Worlds was based on their performances in Star Trek Discovery alone. So they did pretty damn well. In terms of Stamets and Culber, with Culber being brought back to life from the mycelium network, they have a bit of issues connecting again. Culber is not feeling anything. He's feeling a bit disconnected. He's feeling a bit weird. That goes with his relationship with Stamets as well. So there's a lot of build up to that. And luckily at the end of the season they sort of get together. Stamets is just sort of trying to please him. There's a really, it's an emotional storyline that I really enjoy. Those two characters, and killing the gay is a trope in a lot of shows, but thankfully they learned, another one of those little fix-its they did, they learned that maybe we shouldn't kill the gay guys. Ensign Tilly is another highlight of this season, and she was a highlight of season 1 as well. Her optimism, enthusiasm, happiness, kind of wacky nervousness really plays well. And I love that Anson Mount does this thing where when he enjoys something, he just sort of smiles. He sort of gets in on it. And I think it really adds to the emotional plot when the captain links to the youngest crew. And Tilly is one of the best characters in this show. Her relationship with Burnham is almost like sisters. They're worried about each other. There's a lot of connection with each other. And she's just pleasant to have around. She sort of brings light to the darker moments. And is played magnificently. We've obviously got Saru, and Saru's main thing in this, we learn a bit about Saru's homeworld, Kaminar. We learn that they're an oppressed race. They get culled when they're younger. He goes through a Maharai or something like that, which basically before they used to be killed, and then we discover that actually after that they just sort of keep evolving. It's sort of played as he gets a bit more sure of himself, a bit more confident. Basically, it's puberty. The Vaharai is I don't know how to put it. The Vaharai is a stage in their life, not when they're going to die. They've been told their whole existence that's when they're going to die, so they go and get culled by their overseers. We learn a bit about his sister. We learn about why he left. We learned that for some reason, Captain Giorgio kidnapped him from a planet while violating General Order 1. We learn about his sister, which comes up at the end. It's good to learn about alien cultures, and Discovery did really well with this episode because it was really interesting, and also like their overseers, but basically they're just culling the species to eat them. No mirror episodes this season, but we do get just an amazing, important, really generally great performance from Michelle Yeoh, who goes into Section 31. She enjoys it because obviously Section 31 deals with the darker things. She goes to Section 31. She's sort of trying to win power from Captain Leyland, who I'll talk about next. She's trying to work out what the Red Angel is, but they're doing it in sort of a sneakier way of which she enjoys. So Michelle Yeoh is just amazing. She's some fight sequence in this where she kicks ass. It's really great in this series that we don't have the TNG double fist hit, which I noticed during the series. I'm like, I'm so glad they don't do that anymore. The open palm smack, like actual fighting. Just give me actual fighting. But Michelle Yeoh is fantastic. Her conniving, but her clear care for Burnham, her clear hatred for Leyland. It's really wacky. Captain Leyland is a new character this season. He basically runs Section 31, essentially. He's sort of the leader of Section 31, which takes orders from the Federation, which doesn't make sense because in Deep Space Nine, they didn't take orders from the Federation. They just did what they wanted for the security of the Federation. But Captain Leyland wants to get the information. He wants to take it over, and then eventually gets taken over by Control with some nanites. And he becomes sort of a nanite body zombie thing. And the weird thing is I remember when I watched this season, I remember thinking, oh, they're going to introduce like a future Borg coming back and killing them. Because all of the nanites had green around them. They were nanites, which is a main feature of Borg assimilation. And they had veins in their faces. I'm like, oh, it has to be the Borg. It has to be the Borg. It wasn't the Borg. It was the AI calls itself Control. We find out that Spock's gone a bit crazy. He has mental premonitions about machines or AI or living machines destroy all biological life in the universe. Leyland, the guy who plays Leyland is really good. He reminds me of every douchebag boss I've ever had. Like really uncomfortably douchebaggy. He becomes more deranged as time goes on. When Control takes over, because you sort of feel sympathy for Leyland because he's just doing his job, he's doing what he feels is right. Once he's taken over by Control, he's a bit crazy. And there's some excellent steps that Control makes, their obsession with getting that information, with changing things. And it's really specific, and they're really well developed. It's just they did make me think the Borg were coming back. Michael's main journey on this is discovering her mum is the Red Angel that spoke to Spock and stuff when she was a child. And then she works out that she is meant to be the Red Angel. It all culminates in a big thing at the end. So the episode I want to highlight is If Memory Serves, I believe it's called. And we go back to Talos 4. We meet the big head aliens from the cage. We meet Vina again. And it's used so Spock can sort of fix himself. So we learned so much in this episode. So If Memory Serves, we have the culmination of the... we have the culmination of the Culber and Ash Tyler relationship. Ash Tyler obviously being Vok, a Klingon modified to be human who's still working for Section 31, and we don't know where his loyalties lie. We have the conclusion of that, well, the culmination of the tension being that Culber was murdered by Vok in Ash Tyler's body. So there's been a lot of emotion built up around this. But in terms of If Memory Remains, there's also the story of Spock and Burnham's falling out, because in the beginning there's a lot of tension between the two characters. Michael Burnham also trying to learn what Spock knows. They're trying to fix Spock because Spock's gone crazy. We also have a little bit touched on of Vina and Pike's relationship. It's really, really... full, what I would say. It's my favourite. It starts off with like a clip recap of the cage, and I love integrating that 60s-ness to Star Trek Discovery. It connects the storyline, and it's done with tact and honour. They aren't ignoring what happened in the past. If anything, they're adding to it. And the whole episode looks fantastic. I do wish that the Telosians were a little more gender non-specific, because I remember watching The Cage, and I still watch The Cage now, and I don't know whether they are male or female. They're sort of androgynous, whereas in this one there's clearly a big-ass dude, a little lady, and a big-ass dude. Burnham's on the run from Section 31. She's gone to rescue Spock. She sort of disobeyed orders. She goes to Talos 4, because that's how Spock directs her. This really cool thing where the Telosians create a black hole in her mind, so she thinks she's about to die, but Spock stops her. Michael Burnham and Spock's relationship fell apart because she was trying to protect her family and tried to stop a young Spock from caring about her. I'm glad my cat's found that ball, because you know what I need? Cats running around. We learn that Pike and Vina love each other, which is weird. Like, he cared for her in the cage, but I don't think he loved her. But I get where they're going. It's sort of a long-lost love, and it explains a bit more as to why Spock left Pike on Talos 4 in the original series. Guys, we get a lot of, like, there's little sound bits they do with the music when they do the illusions. It's just the harp, which they did in the original series. A lot of respect given to the original series while updating the stuff. It's a really genuinely fantastic episode. The Culber and Ash Tyler stuff is amazing in that the tension's building. Culber's not feeling his emotions for Stamets. He's not feeling right. And he goes and he's angry, and then he goes and sees Ash Tyler and bangs shit off the table and bangs there, and he's desperate. And Saru doesn't stop the fight because he goes, look, just let it happen, which Pike doesn't like later, which I quite enjoy. But you do get that feeling that, like, this confrontation had to happen. I don't know why Culber didn't try to kill him, but that confrontation really, really worked for me in that episode. There's a really good emotional parts to this episode. It's a really fun episode. And I recommend, like, if you watch Annie, that's a great one. Another really cool moment in the series is Pike finding out what happens to him. Because we know from the menagerie in Star Trek TOS that Pike ends up in a chair that beeps once for yes and twice for no, because he had a radiation accident and Spock kidnaps him and takes him to Talos 4. We did not know that Pike actually knew this was coming. So he goes to get the time crystal to get the suit or get something. I don't know why they got the time crystal initially. I imagine it was just to use with the suit or try and get the suit working. He goes to get the time crystal, and he's shown a vision of his future where he saves Anson's lives by almost sacrificing his own in a radiation leak. And then he gets this horrible vision of him in that chair, his face melted. And it's fantastic. Anson Mount's acting is fantastic in this. Like, it's amazing. And he manages to convey that, and the rest of the series, like, you can see, especially in that episode, but in later episodes, that's playing on his mind. And that also goes on into Strange New Worlds as well. If you want to see my reviews for Strange New Worlds, they are on my channel, so go have a look. But this season of Discovery is a pretty big, sharp shift from season 1. The Klingons has taken a step back. We've introduced original series character. We get Rebecca Romijn, who was Mystique in the X-Men films, coming and playing number 1. And she's fantastic. And you know what? When I saw her, I was like, oh my God, I love this woman. I love strong, powerful women. I don't know what to say. But they picked the 3 Enterprise crew, Pike, Spock, and Una, really, really well. The actors make the characters their own. Ethan Peck took a little longer because Leonard Nimoy is so unique, and Ethan Peck looks nothing like Leonard Nimoy. Whereas, like in the Star Trek 2009 films, Zachary Quinto kind of does, and they have to play opposite each other. It's really fantastic, and obviously leading to the culmination of the series. So the Red Angel, we find out, is Burnham. In the end of the final episode, Burnham has to go back and set the 5 original signals in order to move forward. Discovery has to be taken into the future, because if Control gets the sphere data or the alien-y data, it'll become conscious and it will destroy the galaxy. Maybe the universe, but it seems to be the galaxy. We see visions of that. So it's basically a really interesting way of getting Discovery out of the era it's in, taking it out of the 23rd century before Kirk, because a lot of people complained that it didn't match up with the original series, which is stupid, because the original series is like such big chunks of it aren't even canon now. Like the last episode where women couldn't be captain, like no one wants to think that that's a part of the Star Trek universe. But taking it into the 23rd century, taking it into the 31st or the 32nd century takes it to a new place. We don't see that until next season, but we see Pike and Spock and Una on the bridge of the Enterprise, and they see the last Red Angel signal, which is Michael signaling they're alive, and we get this really nice moment of them knowing. The elephant in the room this episode is, why did they go to the 32nd century? And it's very clear that fan reaction to season 1 and 2 was very, this is very different to the Star Trek or TOS in particular and the TNG era. We don't know what you're doing, and we don't really like what you're doing. So this season feels a lot like them taking into account some of that stuff. I think they did some really good things in terms of the tone of the show, making certain things lighter, emphasizing certain other characters, so we get to know who OO is and other bridge crew members. We get a sense of enjoyment, and a sense of like Linus, the big reptilian who sneezes on the guy. We get our first red shirt, although he's in blue in the first episode. He dies because he's a cocky dick. And it's a really, I don't know how to describe it. It's a much more fun series with much more character involvement. Anson Mount brings a very true to form Starfleet Star Trek captain. He brings hope, positivity, patience, guidance, understanding. All of the things you sort of got used to with Picard. He's certainly not a Cisco, and I wouldn't even say he's a Janeway. She's a murderer. But he very much brings that captain captainness, and that there's no ego with his captain. There's no I'm better than you. He's the opposite of Lorca. He's the anti-Lorca. And the biggest change to this series is the show starts to embrace what it means to be Starfleet, what it means to be sort of on this ship with this family of crew. Section 31 sort of being the antithesis of that. But it's, look, for all the things that I had a little bit of an issue with, which is Section 31 being a part of the Federation instead of sort of like a secret part of the Federation, Michelle Yeoh plays that amazingly. Ash Tyler is really good the way he's used. His relationship with Michael sort of plays into it again. Like, I get why he didn't come back, because, to be honest, I don't think his character could do any more. It did feel a little bit like, oh, we're just going to plop him here. So we had Ash Tyler, who was on the side of Burnham. We have Emperor Georgiou, who's on the side of Burnham. We have Leyland, who is evil. And there's a lot of shifts in... It's sort of... This season feels a bit like old Star Trek wrestling with new Star Trek. In terms of the tone, like there's a darkness to the storyline and to what happens. Like, we lose Ariam, who is one of the bridge officers who's half cybernetic. She gets infected with Control. And my main issue with her death was everyone was devastated by her death. But we'd seen her in the background for ages, but she didn't actually, like, get shown very much. So why am I going to have, like, sadness for this character when she was just mostly background until the episode that she died, or the episode that she gets found out and dies? Like, I want to feel sad. They obviously felt sad because they spent time outside. They should have maybe shown us some of those times with her outside instead of just in this one episode. But a lot of that mitigating issues from season 1 and season 1 were still a little bit there, and that's why, like, Ariam, I didn't feel that much for it. A lot of people did. A lot of people felt like, oh my god, poor her, da da da. I didn't. Like, I think she had a cool costume. I think she was there. I think some of the moments in that episode were really good, but I don't know her. And that's generally with Discovery how it was. You don't know anyone but the main people. The shift in tone and the very much build up to what I like to call the Star Trek Discovery reset. It is very clearly almost two separate shows with the same crew in a different time period. Like, I don't know how to put it. When we go to season 3, I'll talk about this more. But in terms of season 2, with the introduction of the Enterprise, which looks fantastic, by the way, I don't mind the redesigns. The bridge, thankfully, in Strange New Worlds, they got rid of that back hallway, but it looks really, really good. A modern update to what we know. It's really interesting to see how they did this. Like, in the end of the series, and it's a bit of a cop-out, they basically invoke a clause in the Federation Charter where no one can speak about Discovery or the Spore Drive or Control, so it doesn't happen again. And it's a bit like, convenient. Because Discovery had the Spore Drive, of which would have been very helpful to certain other captains. But it sort of resets it and goes, look, we're getting the fuck out of here. We're going over there. Calm the fuck down. And that's what they do with next season. This season was... They told the story while fixing a lot of the issues they obviously heard about from season 1, while keeping us interested with the relationships of the characters, introducing new characters, and introducing us to characters who'd been there in season 1 that we didn't see. I like season 2 better than season 1 because season 2 injects Star Trek into Discovery a bit more. It switches to a fantastic sort of... the morals of Star Trek are injected into it. They're in there a little bit in the first season, but in the second season is when they start going, well, we need to introduce more Star Trek. And that's what Discovery did. By season 3, and I'll talk about season 3, and I'll talk about season 4, but season 2 was the beginning of that. It was the beginning of the big change. We also had like Lower Decks come on. I think we had, I'm not sure if we were going to get Prodigy. We didn't know about Strange New Worlds until later that season. We had Picard come out, and Discovery was not alone anymore. So it was a new series, of which we were pretty excited about. And it's an interesting thing, and I might do a video on this later, that these days people either loved Series 1 or Series 2 or love Series 3 or Series 4. There's a very clear divide between the two sets of series. A lot of younger fans really love Season 1 and Season 2, and a lot of older fans don't like Discovery at all. And then there's people like me who really love Season 3 and Season 4. It's an interesting thing because it's almost like it's two separate shows. But yes, what do you think about Star Trek Discovery Season 2? Make sure to like, comment, share. Come back very soon for Star Trek Discovery Season 3 retrospective. If you want to tell me I've missed something or tell me that I'm a fucking moron, feel free to write in the comments. Have a great day. I have been Trek Trav.